Good evening. Good evening. I'm Adele Brown, and I'm your moderator of tonight. Is this too loud for you all? We good? Just to be? I'm going to whisper. And it's my pleasure to invite you into this conversation tonight. We have 5 outstanding candidates who want to display their acumen, as an advocate said, for their position of running for judge. And so we want to welcome you to this forum. We're so pleased that let me make sure I get all my notes right, that the NAACP for the West Baton Rouge Parish was able to put this forum on. And so as we get started, there are a few, let me do this first. Let me invite the mayor up to bring greetings and to welcome you here and to say thanks for coming. And following that, I want to make certain I recognize Council Lady Lawrence for being here tonight. Thank you very much for coming. Thank all of you for coming, because it's always important that we think about in a civil society where there's a social contract, that we all get together and understand what it is that we want collectively for our environment. And the way we do that is we gather information. People put themselves on decide to run, and we're so appreciative of them doing that. And it's our responsibility to evaluate that and to ensure that we are getting the best for our community. And so this is what this opportunity is about tonight. It's not an opportunity to necessarily throw bricks or stones, but it's an opportunity and an event where we get a chance to have an intellectual exchange so that in the end of the game, we all have a thorough opinion. Thomas Jefferson said it probably best. If you want the people to lead, give them the right information and they will make the right decisions. And to that end, we've been doing this for over 200 years. And so America is still great because we exercise this privilege that we've been given. So as we do that, Mr. Mayor, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. On behalf of the City Board, I'd like to welcome everyone to this forum. I'd like to thank the NAACP for putting this forum together so that we can get better information as to, who these candidates are. Each one of them have paid me a visit to the council chambers and also to my office. And I tell you, it's a tough decision because they all got good qualities. So if you got any questions, this is the place to ask and get the response that you need, and we wish everybody well. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So that, I wonder if there's a volume to this. The event, this is the way the thing going to unfold. This is the way it's going to unfold so that you can go out and vote when? Saturday. So we're going to give each candidate 2 minutes to express themselves. Each candidate will give 2 minutes, and then we will ask about 5 questions. And if you have questions you want to ask, please provide the note cards for those questions in order to expedite time and make certain that we get as many questions as possible. We've been in this business for a little bit, and I know that we like to preface our question with a dialogue, a conversation, a monologue. And in order to try to not waste time, or not that that's not good, but to get as many questions as possible, we're going to ask you to write them down. And then we're going to read your question real quickly so that the candidates will have as much time as possible to answer those questions, correct? We good? Candidates, y'all understand the game rules. 2 minutes, 1 minute. Where's my timekeeper? Oh, stand up. Show them what you got in your hand. And what that means. Yellow means what? And that may not be red, but it does mean stop. Thank you very much. So let's get started. The candidates actually picked a piece of paper, and based on that paper, they were... Oh, yes, please. In order to have harmony, let us pray.
Let us bow our heads. Eternal God, our Father, Lord, we come tonight to say thank you. We thank you, dear God, for your grace and your mercy. We thank you, dear God, for all that you've done, doing, and that you're going to do for this community, for your people. We pray, dear God, for these candidates, dear God. We pray that your will be done, not ours, but your will be done. We pray for their families. Cover them. Keep them, dear God. We pray for every heart that's in the building tonight. And we come to give you the glory, the honor, and the praise. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
feeling better balanced and in center now. Thank you for the prayer, Reverend Brown. To start the conversation for the first 2 minutes, this is the order. Attorney Miracle Miles will go first. Then Attorney Kevin James will go second. Is that right, Kevin? What was your number? 2. And so, who has 3? You have number 1. Who has number 2? Who number 3? You 4? Okay, I got this all messed up. Okay. We got 1, Acosta, 2, Kevin James, 3, Tonya Laurie, 4, Miles, and 5, McCormick. In that order. Please, ladies and gentlemen, let me pass the mic. You be 3 then. You be 3. I messed it up, so you be 3.
My name is Tom Acosta. First, I want to thank the West Baton Rouge chapter of the NAACP for hosting this forum this evening. As you all know, I'm a West Baton Rouge native, a 61-year-old lifelong resident of the Brule-Addis area, married to Mary Broussard, and we live in my childhood home that I grew up in. After LSU Law School and passing the bar in '82, I served for 3 years on active duty in the Army in Germany, and I came home in '85, working in Baton Rouge, and opened my office here in Port Allen in September of '86, where I've done all sorts of things in the law: civil, criminal, representing rich, poor, white, and black, and in and out of court, and I believe earning a reputation as an honest, ethical, competent attorney. I spent 30 years in the military, retiring in 2008, and I've worked to make our community better. 30 years in the Chamber, Port Allen Rotary Club, many years with the West Baton Rouge Museum, and very active in my church parishes. One thing I want to do, yesterday is 3 years to the day that my wife and I buried our 21-year-old son, William, who died of a heroin overdose. We were lucky to get him in 90-day inpatient rehab, but not everybody can do that. West Baton Rouge is the only parish that doesn't have a drug court, and so we need to bring one here because addicts that want and need help don't need to be thrown into the prison system. They really need to be given the opportunity to get the help that they need. And that's one thing that I intend to do, and I have a very personal dedication to that. We all know about the problems that our last judge had. That's why we're having this election. And I believe that with my 32 years of legal experience, my 30 years of military service, my lifetime of community and church involvement, all more than anybody else, make me the best candidate in this race. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Kevin L. Celestine James. I'd like to thank the NAACP for having me tonight and you for coming to this event. My family has been an integral part of the community for many years in Ventress, Louisiana. I hail from the metropolitan city of Ventress, where I reside currently. I've been practicing law for about 21 years now. So I'm not new to the game. I'm not a rookie in any way. I completed my education at Louisiana State University, an undergraduate school, and then went on to pursue my law degree at Southern University and my master's degree at Southern University. So I'm both of the cats at the same time. So I'm LSU and Southern. Currently, I'm teaching law office practice to the law students at Southern. So I'm more than familiar with the law in federal and state court. I feel that the areas that I practice in, criminal, personal injury, domestic law, give me a panoramic view of everything that is going to come to the judge on the bench. Those judges host those particular areas, and those are areas that are my forte. I feel that based on my years of experience in appellate court and state court, I will be available to the people and available to know what sentences to apply and what law to apply in any particular situation. I would like for you all to consider voting for number 9 on Election Day, which is Saturday, March 24th. If you all have any questions for me, I will entertain them at the appropriate time. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon. My name is Tanya Lurie. I am a 43-year-old attorney here in West Baton Rouge Parish. I'm a graduate of Port Allen High, 1992. I graduated from LSU with my undergrad degree in 1996, and then from Southern Law Center in 1999. During my time in school, I worked in Port Allen at McDonald's before moving on to the state, and then while I was in law school, I was a law clerk for this division, Division B. I was there for about 4 years as a law clerk. Once I left the clerking position, I went over to East Baton Rouge and did some criminal defense work, focusing primarily on felonies. Over there, I gained a large amount of experience handling jury trials. I was not keeping up with the number of trials that I handled, but I believe it's between 30 and 50 felony trials that I've handled as both a prosecutor and a defense attorney, handling them in Iberville, Pointe-Coupee, West Baton Rouge, and East Baton Rouge Parish. When I left East Baton Rouge, I went to prosecute for Mr. Ward in Pointe-Coupee Parish. I was the primary felony prosecutor there for 3 years before coming back over here to West Baton Rouge to do the defense work that I do with the Public Defender's Office. That's the position that I currently hold. During this time, I've also maintained a private practice, which when my children were younger, it was in my home, and now is located here in Port Allen, focusing primarily on family work and also civil work, whether it's successions, wills, property, things such as that. The vast majority of my experience is criminal, although family is secondary to that. And the diversity that I have in this area, I think, is what makes me suitable candidate for this. And combined my experience with my personality, I think a lot of people in the area know me just from being here in West Baton Rouge. I am fair. I'm level-headed. I believe that the court system should treat everyone equally. I believe that every person should know when they walk into the courtroom that their case is going to be decided on only the facts that are heard in the courtroom, and that the law will be applied equally to everyone. I thank you for your time tonight, and please, I would be humbled to have your consideration for your vote. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the NAACP for inviting us here for this forum tonight. This is our third event speaking to the public. I would also like to thank my wife for being present. She's endured the last 5 months of this campaigning, and I can tell you as a candidate, it's not an easy process. It takes a lot of help from a lot of good people. To tell you a little bit about myself, I'm a 1992 graduate of Bruley High School. After high school, where I played sports, all-state baseball, first-team all-district football, offense and defense, went to Southeastern Louisiana University, played baseball. While I was at Southeastern, met my beautiful wife, Candy. We had our first daughter, Skylar McCormick. Thereafter, I went into the United States Air Force. Served 14 years in the United States Air Force, and while I was on active duty, I also had the privilege of going to night school at Florida State University. So I was previously enlisted, received my bachelor's degree, and then was accepted into Southern University Law Center back in 1998. We completed Southern 2001. I was accepted for the one-year college program for the Air Force JAG program and went active duty thereafter. We had privileges staying at Vance Air Force Base, Enid, Oklahoma, Tyndall Air Force Base, Panama City, Florida, Patrick Air Force Base, Cocoa Beach, Florida. While I was at Patrick, I also deployed to Iraq, where I prosecuted over 300 terrorists in Iraq. Between the international courts, federal courts, and state courts, I got over 400 jury trials, court-martials, and judge-alone trials. I've prosecuted and litigated over 2,000 criminal cases and civil cases. Very active in my community, also a lifetime member of the American Legion, Veterans of Foreign War. I'm in the Rotary Club, past president, also in the Lions Club, Air Force Association, Coastal Conservation of America, Wild Turkey Federation. If there's an organization out there that will help the community, I'm involved in it. My wife and I got 3 kids. Skylar's a senior at LSU. Ashley's a sophomore at Southeastern, and I got a 14-year-old son named Matt Dillon. Matt Dillon's going to be attending high school next year. We've been campaigning on leadership, experience, and impartiality. Thank you very much for your time and consideration. I hope to answer any and all questions that you have. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. I am attorney Miracle Miles. I'm from Plaquemine, Louisiana, and I, too, am a candidate for Judge, Division B of the 18th Judicial District Court. Just to let you guys know a little bit about me, I have a private practice in Plaquemine, Louisiana, where I handle mainly family and personal injury law. Prior to that, prior to streamlining my practice, I was also in general practice. So I've had the opportunity to handle various types of cases, inmate suits, civil lawsuits, personal injury, criminal. And I've also been a public defender in this district as well, in both Point Capee and West Baton Rouge parishes. I do a lot of, I guess I would call it public service in my private practice. I do pro bono work. I also assist the public, educating the public about expungements. That's something that I do volunteer. And overall, I just love helping people. I became an attorney because I love to help people. I practice family law because I think that that's the best opportunity for me to help families in our district. And I'm running for this seat because I want to be able to help people on a broader perspective. I believe that all people should have equal access to justice in our courts. I also believe that the law should work for everyone that comes before our courts. I'm running my campaign on 3 words that I think that are characteristics that every judge should have. And that's integrity, compassion, and fairness for all people. Another thing that I think is very important are the youth of our district. I believe that we have a unique opportunity in our court system to not create a revolving door, but to help our youth that come before the court to be better citizens in society. So for instance, juvenile delinquents, we want to help to redirect their paths. For children that come in that are abandoned or abused, we want to help with their development. And so there are programs in sentencing that I would like to implement for our youth because we have an opportunity to help them in that place. And I think that we should invest a lot in that area so that our communities can be better, safer, and stronger. Again, I stand with integrity, fairness, and compassion for all people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. At this time, we will transition into the questions. I'm going through trying to understand and try to synthesize and consolidate questions as much as possible. So if you see just one sentence or one word that you recognize, is your question. We will start with Ms. James, and we will just rotate back around. Attorney James. The question is, what are your major influences in your life that will direct your decisions administering the duty of judge? What is basically is a consolidation of what's your mission statement, what your value set, what will direct your decisions as you become a judge, as you administer the office of judge? Everyone has the question. You're clear.
Yes, as judge, I would like to state that the sense of character that I have, I derived from my family. I have a rich family, rich in history. My grandfather built caskets for the disadvantaged. My aunt taught school for 42 years in Ventress. Certainly my mother has been a great inspiration to me as well, giving me a rich sense of Christ. As a minister of the gospel, I've been a minister of the gospel for over 17 years now. Those will direct and give me some sense of compassion and fairness for those who come before me. So I'd like to draw on all of those experiences in order to formulate sentences. Certainly, there are mitigating factors in any sentence that you may have for someone who comes before you. Mitigating factors meaning what form that person's psyche in developing a criminal mindset. What background did they come from? What school did they finish from? Did they even finish school? Did they even graduate? Do they have the aptitude to understand the difference between right and wrong? And those are factors as well as various other factors which would determine what sentence to impose. Certainly, we look at the law, and that is our basis for determining what will happen in any given situation. Thank you so much.
Let me remind you, if I did not appropriately, are you ready, timekeeper? 1 minute, 60 seconds.
I believe that one of the main considerations that I will be able to look at whenever I'm sitting on the bench would be my life, my story, where I came from. I was raised in a single-parent household the majority of my life, and I had a parent that fought some substance abuse issues. I know that the road isn't always an easy road to take, and I believe that that's something that I can portray to people when they come. It's something that I have used as a public defender and as a prosecutor when talking to someone charged and looking at where I want to lead them and where they need to go to try to make a difference for them and help them make the right choices, help rehabilitate someone, help put them on the right path. Sometimes a success story of someone changing their circumstances of what they were born into and making it something better is what they need to hear to encourage them to make those proper steps. My experience in both being a defense attorney and a prosecutor also helped me have the compassion that I need when looking at someone. There are those crimes that affect us as a society where we don't want to look at rehabilitation. There's a need to keep society safe, but then there are also those crimes that they're not that offensive to us. We know that the person's sick and may need rehabilitation. Being able to look at the history I have with my work and my life, I think that those are things that I'll be able to apply equally and help people. That combined with my compassion and my integrity, I think will help me guide things on the bench. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brown. My father's always been a big influence in my life. My dad was a truck driver for 42 years on the nation's highways, gone 3, 4, 5 days out the week so he could put food on the table for us. A lot of times he wasn't there, but anytime he had an opportunity to be there, whether he come in at 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and go into a 7 o'clock school function, he was there. I was fortunate enough to have my mother and father, both of them still alive. The other thing that I give, and it's hard to talk about some of the people that influence your life because some of them aren't here today. My grandmother, when my father was gone and my mom was working, was the one that helped raise us. She's passed now for about 12 years. But you bring all those life experiences. Being deployed to a war zone, you get to see how other countries, how other children live, and it makes you want to do better when you come back to your country and improve things. But one of the biggest things my father taught me was, son, stay in school. Knowledge is power. Knowledge is the great equalizer. My dad was bringing home $250, $300 a week when we were younger. Thank the Lord, he still finally went into petroleum products, and then we started making a little more money, but it sure wasn't a whole heck of a lot. But what we lacked in money, we had in love. I will also derive the experiences from the Air Force with the core values: integrity, service before self, and excellence in all we do. At the end of the day, it's all about taking care of people, taking care of your community. And one of the things that he taught me was, if you want to see change, make it happen. Don't sit back and wait for it to happen. And if you can't lead it, help somebody that can. Either lead, follow, or get out the way.
Yes. Attorney Miles.
My primary influence in running for judge number one is my faith. I take the duties and responsibilities of a judge very seriously, and I myself would never want to be in a position where I can make a decision that is unfair or unjust for anybody. Secondly would be my parents. They taught me, they raised me. Both of my parents are attorneys in Plaquemine, Louisiana, and they always taught me the importance of giving back. As a little girl, we were always, during the summer, whether it was a summer camp for underprivileged kids, or back to school, or anything, we were always involved with giving back. And that's something that I've continued to do as an adult. A judge is a position of service. We are elected to the position. So when you're elected to a seat, then you're elected to do a job that the people have elected you to do. And so I take that I take that very seriously, and I believe that a judge is a position of service. And so when you get into it, you have to be able to serve the community, not just be there for power, but to do what the community needs you to do as a judge. Thank you.
Oh, come on, let's get that question before I ask another one then. I'm following my own script.
The most important influence in my life is one that my parents gave me, and that is faith in the good Lord. The faith teaches what are the two most important rules: love of God and love of neighbor. And so that you have to take care of those less fortunate than yourself. I had a sister, Kay Marie, who had muscular dystrophy, and so I learned from a very early age that you take care of those less fortunate than yourself. In court, our last judge got in trouble by disrespecting the law and disrespecting people. I will have respect for the law and respect for people. Everyone who comes into my court will be treated impartially, fairly, equally, regardless of how much money they make, regardless of what political party they belong to, who they supported, anything else. I was talking to former Mayor Derek Lewis the other day, and he made a good point. We have a lot of money that's being spent in this campaign, and some people brag about how much money they're spending. I'm probably spending one of the least amounts of money. And he said, you know, those who brag about money, even though they claim to be your friend now, when they get into office, the ones who have money will be the one they're looking out for. So think about that. I think that he made a very good point to me. Thank you.
Keep moving along, building on our conversation. There seem to be a series of questions around equality, equity, and the distribution or administration of the law. So we'll just go with, do you agree or disagree with administering the law in the courtroom to everyone the same? Explain. The other one says basically, how will you work to ensure equality for the people of all backgrounds in the courtroom? So the real question is about equality, administering the law, fairness across the board, regardless of the person.
This is something that is of the utmost importance, and it's something that I see working with the Public Defender's Office. I watch this day in and day out. I watch the clients that I'm appointed to represent. I watch the clients that have paid attorneys in the courtroom, and I keep up with it to make sure that they're treated equally. And if I ever see a situation where I don't think it's happening that way, I'm the first one to go to the DA's office and talk to them about it and make sure that things are changed. We are lucky here in West Baton Rouge. I feel that the Public Defender's Office or the private defense attorneys and the DAs have a very good working relationship where when I point out something like that to them, they fix it. This is something that I can carry forward onto the bench with me, watching the fact patterns. And of course, it's not just the person and the charge that you're looking at. You have to look at the history of the person. You have to look at the rap sheets. You have to look at the education level. You have to look at their background. But that would be one of my top priorities, is to make sure people that come into the courtroom are treated equally. And like I said, it's something that I already practice now. I practice it as a prosecutor. I practice it as a defense attorney. And I would continue to instill it as a judge.
To answer the question, yes, it should be equal, but to answer it, no, it's not equal. Too many times people that have the financial resources go into court and they win. What happens with the person that don't have the financial resources? They get stuck with a public defender that's probably overworked, underpaid, and now you get to suffer the wrath of that. And I see it all too often as a prosecutor. This clique over here that maintains the power in the courtroom is part of the problem with our justice system now. The only way to eradicate that is to bring change. I don't have the political support system in this parish of folks helping me along the way. And if you like the way it's going, continue to vote the same people in office. If you want change to your community to make it better, we're giving you the option. Thank you very much.
Fairness and impartiality are at the very fiber of our justice system. It's what our courts are about. When people come into court, they expect to be treated fairly and impartially. For me, the way that I would do that, number one, is by being myself. I'm just, as an attorney, I've fought for people to have fairness and impartiality in the courtroom. And I think also, if I were the judge running my own courtroom, I see so much, as Mr. McCormick spoke about, the group that's in power in the courtroom. Well, we just need to get rid of that. Let the judge run the courtroom. We don't need the state calling out cases as if they're, it just needs to look like the judge is running the courtroom, and also the judge needs to be actually doing that. I think also promising people favors. Oh, I got you on this. Judges need to stay away from that. Because at some point, two people are going to come in your courtroom, and one you promised a favor and one you didn't. Well, that taints the integrity of the court. And that's something I will tell you in my campaign that I have not done. I have not offered anybody any favors. Nobody politically has endorsed me, and I'm happy about that. Why? Because it shows that I'm independent, and I'm okay with that. Thank you.
Yes, I do agree that a courtroom, as a general rule, needs to be impartial. The judge needs to apply the law impartially. However, there is no cookie-cutter determination of what sentence needs to be applied to a particular person. This is why a judge traditionally orders what's called a PSI, or a pre-sentence investigation report, which will allow the judge to look into the background, the age, the experiences of that particular individual that formed their basis for committing the crime. Once that PSI is studied and the judge has an opportunity to question that particular prisoner, then they will know exactly what sentence to impose. So, yes, as a general rule, impartiality is a consideration. But we need to look at the entire dossier of that person, whether or not they have prior felony convictions, or they are a career criminal, or whether this was their first issue with the law, and determine what sentence to apply. And that's how you exercise judicial discretion in determining the sentence to give a person and impose on a person. Otherwise, we just put a card in a computer and say, this person was convicted of this. Give them a sentence. They need a judge who has a mind to be able to discern and disseminate the information and impose a sentence appropriately. Thank you.
So far, the conversation has been predominantly on criminal law, and everyone likes to talk about criminal law. We have prosecutors, public defenders up here. I've never been part of the DA's office or the public defender's office, so it will be easier for me to be impartial and not be swayed by either one of them, because I haven't worked for either one of them. However, it's important to remember that 65%, two-thirds of a judge's time is spent with civil matters. I've got more civil experience than any of the other candidates up here. I've been doing that for 32 years. I've done criminal as well, but impartiality, to know that our last judge got in trouble. Took a hunting trip to Texas after having, with some plaintiff lawyers, that he had rendered a verdict in their favor. We all know that's not right. This very same judge, you would think he might be supporting Ms. Lurie, who used to clerk for him. But just ask her afterwards who the judge who disrespected the law and people and who violated the law is supporting in this race. They say birds of a feather, something to be very careful about. With me, I have represented all sorts of people and been fair impartial, honest with all of them, regardless of how rich or poor you are, regardless of the color of your skin. That will not change when I'm judge.
To what extent have you practiced, and what is your quality experience in the area of criminal law, family law, complex civil litigation? Who's next? Whose turn? Is it yours or yours?
I'll go if you want me to. And I'll also let you know if we're not going to be courteous and respectful to people, I'm going to go ahead and leave right now. If some of the candidates need to give, somebody have one mistake in their life and they're going to hold them accountable for the last 20-some years. Personally, I think Judge Free is a fine man. He made mistakes, but he's just like everybody else in here. So you're not going to hear me bashing anybody. I'll also tell you that, as far as experience, until you step in somebody's shoes and follow the path that they went down, you can't talk about anybody. And those that throw stones are normally the first ones that judge people. Well, I'm not here to judge people. I'm here to talk about my credentials, what I've done for a living, regardless of who is supporting me and who isn't supporting me. I'll tell you a quick story about this Republican, too. You see this Republican on my card? And I'm getting away from the question. I'm going to get back to it. So, no, I will keep the time. How many people know Miss Jordan from Bruley High School back in the 80s and 90s? Stick with the question. So, to get back to the question, talking about the civil matters.
So the question is, to what extent have you practiced in the area of criminal law, family law, complex civil litigation?
And to get back on topic, I've been a prosecutor for 17 years. Iraqi courts, federal courts, state courts, even mayor's courts. I've been able to be in front of various judges, not just in the United States, but all around Louisiana. And what I can bring to the court is a broad perspective of various judges and pick and choose which judge I want to follow and be able to bring to my courtroom. As far as family law, under Buddy Caldwell's administration at the Louisiana Department of Justice, I was able to do civil cases. And yes, I had $1 million cases. And one of them cases is why I'm being able to run for district court judge, because I'm a firm believer you need to put your money where your mouth is. When I told people I was going to run, that's exactly what I'm doing, spending my money on running for a campaign. And we are very fortunate in that regard that my wife supports everything that I do. I've also been able to do succession work, title work, and various other civil cases, whether it be motion practice, procedural practice in the courtroom, as far as ascertaining. And I see I'm getting cut off because I lost track at the beginning, but thank you very much.
Thank you. We appreciate everyone following the rules and staying within your allotted time and focus on the questions, please.
All right, so as my experience in criminal and civil matters, I have experience with felonies, misdemeanors, traffic tickets, successions, which one of my cases in successions, my argument set legal precedent in the appellate court regarding the sufficiency of a formal acknowledgement of a child. So I do a lot of successions work. I also have done family law. I am a qualified divorce and custody mediator as well. I've done inmate suits, that's representing inmates that have been injured in jail. I've done those. Personal injury suits, I've done 18-wheeler automobiles. Done dog bites. I have extensive experience in a lot of different cases. I've done tenant-landlord disputes. I've even had the opportunity to sue some people regarding the flood, where contractors would come in, take their money, and not fix their houses. And that's about it. But guys, I've kind of had experience in various things because I was in general practice. I decided to streamline my practice because I didn't want my hand in a whole bunch of cookie jars. So it made it easier for me. But thank you.
When I opened my office here in Port Allen 32 years ago, I pretty much took anything that came in the door, civil, criminal, family, juvenile, you name it. I've been in courts in all three of our parishes here, as well as many other parishes, East Baton Rouge and other parishes. I've been in federal court, both in the state of Louisiana and in Mississippi and Alabama. I've actually defended and won a criminal jury trial. And I've handled week-long trials in East Baton Rouge and long judge trials here and all over. I've got experience, and I think I'm the only one that can say this, as a summary court-martial officer for 2.5 years in the Louisiana Guard. I actually had to make judgments and did send young soldiers to jail at Central Lockup in New Orleans, and that's no day in the park, I can tell you. The other thing is when I was in the Army after 9/11, I had to close my office for a couple of years and serve in Kuwait and Iraq. Well, in Iraq, in 2003, I served as a member of prisoner of war tribunals, deciding whether or not to keep enemy detainees, Iraqis, in prison or not, actually making judgments. So I have a very diverse experience in the law. Thank you.
Yes, if I had to articulate and break down the particular areas of law that I practice in, I would do it 30-30-30. 30% criminal law, 30% domestic, and 30% everything else, personal injury and so forth. With reference to criminal law, I practiced on my own the entire time I've been out of law school. I now matriculate and teach at Southern University Law Center, and I tease the students all the time. I said, this is my first job. But all the time that I've been practicing law, I've been practicing for myself. When I've done criminal law, I've done everything from theft to murder trials. I've also done extensive appellate work in the First Circuit Court of Appeals and in federal court as well, which is definitely germane to know the two types of courts and how they operate. I feel that I'm more than qualified to have a overall view of every area of law. And so, therefore, I would ask you to support me in my candidacy for judge. Thank you.
Civil law is probably the area that I've practiced the least amount in. I have handled civil cases, both in my private practice and when I was clerking for the judge. Part of my job was to prepare the cases for court, which was reading the pleadings, reviewing the memos submitted by the attorneys, and preparing memos for the judges to make their ruling off of. So I feel like my experience in civil law is more than sufficient to handle this position. My primary practice was 96% family law. I handled all types of family cases. I'm a litigator. I'm in the courtroom. I'm not in the office doing paperwork. I'm in the courtroom several days a week, every week, and my office comes secondary to that, trying to get the pleadings ready for the next day in court. Criminal is where I have the most experience. To insinuate that someone's stuck with a public defender is nothing but an insult. I have 17 years of experience, and I left doing prosecutorial work to do defense work because I knew that I could help people. My reputation in this community predates this campaign for judge, and people of this community know where I have been and who I've been helping and what my experience entails. Everything that I do for my clients, whether they're a public defender or a paid attorney, is equal, and that's something that we have to fight in court all the time, and it's a shame that something is condoned by another attorney.
Okay. The audience has asked another question and is highly in the news now, so let's go to it. The question is, how do each candidate feel about, how do each candidate about the school shooting? What are the solutions? And so there's a two-part question. It's really about gun shooting and gun violence and the shooting in the school. What is the solution, and what's your opinion on gun control? We good? You got the question. What is the solution to the school shootings, and what's your opinion on gun control?
Yeah, that is a tough question, but I can tell you guys how I feel about it primarily. I believe that any student that comes on a school campus with a gun, talking about that they're going to bring a gun or anything of that sort, I think that matter needs to be taken very seriously. As far as gun laws, and I do want to let you guys know that pursuant to the judicial canons, I can't tell you how I feel about laws particularly because I have to stay neutral. But I think that it's very important that we start implementing some things in our schools for the safety of our children. And I'm not sure, I would hate to say it's a shame that you can't send your child to school because you might get that tragic call one day, but, and I know it would probably cost a lot of money to beef up security in schools, but definitely they probably need to start doing some type of metal detectors. I know they've started doing like the clear book sacks. I'm not sure if we're doing it in the district, but they need to do that. And they also need to take threats very seriously because with the school shooting in Florida, a lot of those students said, oh, I knew he was going to do that. He's been saying he's going to do it. He's been threatening students. So how he even got on the campus is alarming within itself. And then they also talked about how the officer that worked on the campus never even went into the school to try to disarm him. So we probably need more security in our schools, period. And I can imagine one guy, with a gun like that he was using, a military rifle, he probably would have gotten killed too, approaching him. So I just think we need to beef up security. As far as how I feel about gun laws, I don't think that any regular man on the street should have an AR-15. What are we going to do with that? From what I understand, I don't hunt. And what I understand, you don't need it for hunting. I don't know. Somebody might know that. But okay, thank you.
I'm going to answer the question, but first, I forgot something the last time on legal experience, and I've been the Bruley Town Attorney for 12 years, including 12 years as prosecutor in Mayor's Court. On the school shooting, what can anyone say about that? It's unfortunately a tragedy that seems to repeat itself in our country a lot more frequently, whether it's a lack of faith, whether it's too much television, too much video games, too much easy access to guns. God knows. None of us have the solution to it, and if anyone gives you a quick answer. Oh, okay. Anyone gives you a quick answer, it's not going to be a good one. As far as gun control, as a judge, I have to respect the law, and I have to follow and obey the Constitution. I know no one wants to hear that, but that is the only honest answer that we can give you. We can't prejudge and say what we would do if one of those cases come before us. We have to follow the law and respect the Constitution. If you want change, the legislature is where you start. Thank you.
Yes, with reference to the gun situation and the gun violence that's been going on, I had the honor and privilege of teaching in Orleans Parish for several years. And during that time, one of the major situations that was set up to make sure that the students were in a safe environment was the metal detector. All schools should install mandatory metal detectors. And not only that, they should have security that's available on campus. There was also a power button in the room that in case a situation occurred, you could automatically press that button and security would arrive instantly. Those are things that we can do to make sure that our students are in a safe environment so that they can pursue their education with no issues. Also, I have some trepidation about the teachers having guns in their desks or on their person. It would only take a hot minute for a student to grab one of those weapons and turn them on a classmate or some other person in the room. Also, those people are not properly trained, and so they may not know how to utilize a weapon. So I have some trepidation about that. But certainly metal detectors and security will make sure that our students are safe. Thank you.
believe that security is step one, but that's just the beginning. In my opinion, what it would take to make our schools safer is going to take community involvement. It's going to take involvement not only from the families of the students, it's going to take involvement from law enforcement, it's going to take involvement from other students, and it's going to take involvement from people in respected positions, whether that's police officers, judges, legislatures, district attorneys, other teachers, people that can come in, pastors, mentors to the children. The students will know what's happening well before anyone in authority will. Having those connections, having that open line of communication, recognizing mental health issues are things that it's going to take for a community to come together to ensure the safety of the children. The metal detectors and the security can only go so far when it comes to that. Once the entire community gets involved, I believe that we'll see a change in the environment overall.
Let me just say, the first thing that's going to stop a bad person with a gun is a good person with a gun. I'm an avid believer in the Second Amendment rights, especially being here in South Louisiana, sportsman's paradise. However, I do believe that we should have some restrictions in place. There were a bunch of processes that were already in place in Florida. Teachers, coaches, guidance counselors all said he needed to be committed under the Baker Act in Florida that allows 72-hour hold to be able to evaluate people. Nobody followed through with it. The gentleman turned 18 years old, was able to go get a gun, and then use that gun maliciously. We also had failures in the justice system. The FBI had tips. This guy was actually telling people he was going to take a gun to the school and do stuff. The FBI failed, just like they failed during 9/11. Not only did the FBI fail, responding officers coming to the schoolhouse decided that they were going to take shelter instead of confronting the person. Could have saved multiple lives. If the security processes in place would have been followed, I'm not saying there wouldn't have been some deaths involved, but the number of the deaths would have been greatly diminished. The other thing I want people to know is guns don't pull triggers, people pull triggers. We need money to go through our mental health programs to better identify those folks that don't need guns to take their rights away for having guns. Increasing the age limit to be able to have a gun is one step in the right direction.
Thank you. Thank you. As we get close to the end, we have two more questions. We will give you the last question, but not yet. They tell me you got a bunch of them, so decide which one is the best. And so what I want to do with the audience at this point, if you will, for our candidates, I'm going to lump a couple things together. So you're going to get a minute and 30 seconds to answer this last one, and then we're going to go to you. There are two compelling thoughts going on among the audience tonight. One has to deal with rehabilitation. If elected judge and a defendant enter your courtroom that has a drug addiction, what could be done in that day in terms of rehabilitation? The second part, that same question is asked another way. What are your plans for rehabilitation for juveniles that's already in the system? And so I'm going to make it a little bit more complex, and I'm going to give one more thought. And the other thought, y'all got those two? Rehabilitation. The final thought is your ability to administer and to administer justice in the court system. What happens and how do you handle one of the lawyers who come in ill-prepared into your courtroom? So I think, where do we start? Man, you better than me at the rules.
Rehabilitation, very important. Training, having somebody come back into the community, giving them the skills that they need, getting them the resources. I've been a member of the Chamber of Commerce, spent 10 years on the board, 2 years as chairman here. I have good contacts in the business community, and that's important so you can reach out to get people jobs, to rehabilitate them, because the end goal is to make them a contributing member of society again. In terms of rehabilitation of juveniles, juveniles have no choice as to who their family is. We kind of lost the Family in Need of Services program here in the district when Gwen Hayes retired as intake officer and attorney in the DA's office a few years back. And so we need to whoever becomes judge, and it's work with all the other judges and the DA's office to take advantage of that state program again to help rehabilitate juveniles. And then the last part of that was, attorneys that are unprepared. Attorneys have to be treated with respect. I have been in courts over my 32, almost 33 years of practicing law, and I've seen judges treat attorneys with disrespect, and I always kind of got the feeling that they forgot a little bit about what it was to practice law. You do it quietly, you don't embarrass people.
Yes, rehabilitation as far as juveniles is concerned, first of all, there needs to be some counseling to determine what their background is and what is causing them to behave in a certain manner. After that, I would recommend some type of mentorship program as far as adult men coming in and showing them how to behave. As an attorney in the community and an interested community activist, I've always taken the youth and showed them etiquette and different ways to respond in different situations, as well as how to present themselves in public speaking, proper table utensil use, and those types of things help a child to develop some kind of cognitive idea of how they are supposed to behave among other people. As far as adults, particularly those with drug issues, there are various agencies within the city, such as Naacp, who take in those who are drug addicted, and particularly if they have a prison record or some kind of history, the court can sentence them to the Naacp program where they have an on-site situation set up for them to go through the rehabilitation process. And then thirdly, with reference to inappropriate attorneys who come into court unprepared, there's a situation where you could sidebar and approach the bench and let that attorney articulate why they are ill-prepared today. But certainly the ruling should dictate them being unprepared, just as in the classroom. Thank you.
Doing criminal work, you learn very quickly that good people make bad choices when they have drug problems. It doesn't make them bad people. The second thing you learn is that the person has to want to make the change before any services that you offer are going to be effective. We do need a drug court in West Baton Rouge to help people. We do need better access to substance abuse counseling and treatment here on the west side of the river. Those are things that I would like to look at. Juveniles is kind of the same thing. You have to put them on the right path to help them make the right choices. Instilling the fact that they are going to get an education, helping them get some type of skill or trade is imperative to their success in the future. Being able to be self-sufficient, being able to be in control of where they're going in the future is important. When you take someone who doesn't have a job, a car, an education, or a skill that they can go to work with, they believe that their future is pretty bleak. I think that we can implement things. I'm a firm believer in the work release program, giving someone the things that they need to be independent and self-sufficient. I've watched it change lives. I've had clients come back to me and talk about how good it was to get out of jail, to not be incarcerated, to have a job, to have an income, to be able to get housing, to be able to get a vehicle, and to be able to move forward with their life. These are all things that sometimes we take for granted. Attorneys should be held to a higher standard, but ultimately it's the client's job to look at them and know if they're prepared for court and if they want to continue their representation.
Thank you. Today I had the privilege to attend the West Baton Rouge Drug Outreach Program sponsored by the West Baton Rouge Parish, also the schools, Port Allen, Bruley High School. The dilemma that we have is we don't know how the young people are nowadays. We grew up without the age of computers and Facebook and Instagram and all these other social programs that they have where they can pass it around instantaneously instead of word of mouth like we used to, or passing notes while the teacher wasn't looking. The other dilemma that we have is funding. The reason we don't have a drug court is because we don't have the facilities to send people. So what's the purpose of having a drug court if you can't fund it? That's the biggest problem we have. We need to find out where the money's at so we can institute these programs. The other problem you got is when somebody does commit a crime for a drug, first thing they do is throw them in jail. Now they got a criminal record, can't work, and they get sent right back to the same environment once they do get out of jail, and you just repeat the vicious cycle all over again. One of the things I want to do is partner with the unions and the ABC contractors. College isn't for everybody. What we need to do is find people trades, let them put food on their tables to give them jobs instead of going up down Highway 1 and seeing all these cars from Texas, Mississippi, and Florida taking the jobs down here. We need to get our people trained, get our people those jobs. Finally, as far as lawyers in the courtroom, I've seen it all. You'd be surprised what you see in a courtroom. You pay somebody good money to represent you. Next thing you know, they're out having lunch with their friends, and then the judge is about to cancel the court, coming back at 2 o'clock, and then they show up. We need accountability, and people start being responsible with the legal cases. And as your judge, I'll definitely hold them so.
When we talk about rehabilitation, I think it's important that we have judges that are willing to look beyond the surface of what's before them in court and actually be able to exercise enough compassion to either be able to speak with people and find out what their issues are. And of course, we have other ways that we can find out the background of people, like pre-sentencing investigations and things of that sort. But I think that with adults, and he asked specifically about people that are addicted to drugs, you have to, number one, be able to discern that there's an issue. You know, some people will come into court and they're charged with possession with intent to distribute, but they're really not trying to distribute, they just use. You know, so you have to be able to discern what's really going on with the person and implement sentencing that's actually going to help them. When people are sentenced, they get review dates to come in. So when you sentence them, you know, just for example, you can say, you know, I want you to find employment, or I want you to do drug treatment and follow, drug counseling and follow whatever treatment that's advised. Well, they have to come back into court for a review to show that they've done those things. And unfortunately, we cannot, everybody's not going to change, but if you can help somebody, it's worth it. So I think that would need to be implemented. Drug court, I do think that we need one, but of course we do have to find the funding for that, and we do not have a lot of programming on this end for that. So that's something that whoever becomes judge, I would hope, and hopefully it's me, but I would be looking into those sorts of things. As far as juveniles are concerned, we really need to, again, look beyond the surface into the needs of the juvenile and try to help them develop the best way that they can while they're in court. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. You have a question, sir?
Yes. This question that I'm going to ask you is very important to me because over the years, I've thought that the court system has lost its compassion. The law should be implemented with compassion and professionalism. This is my question. Are you comfortable with the statistic that for first-degree murder, a black and Latino are 7 times more likely to get the death penalty than our white counterparts? If you're not comfortable, what would you do to change it? And do you believe in the early release program that the governor has implemented? That's my second question. The government has implemented the early release program. Do you believe in that early release for nonviolent offenders?
You all do your best you can. It's right here. You get a minute to deal with both of them. You make the choice.
I'm glad you asked that question. The late, great Martin Luther King once said that would that there come a day where men would be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. In my opinion, that day has not gotten here yet. Unfortunately, the law is applied heavy-handed, I feel, racially. We are getting close. We're getting there. We're working towards equality, but we have not obtained it as of yet. I believe that as far as those who are sentenced, we should make sure that the sentence fits the crime, but also apply the law with some type of compassion. I've seen judges hand out sentences of 20, 30 years like it's just, they're going to stay there 30 days. No, that's years that will be done in jail. And so the issue there is whether or not you're abiding rehabilitation or whether you're just trying to punish the person for no good reason. And so we have to apply the law with compassion. Yes, sir.
The clock getting faster on 30 and 60. I think, sir, that time is up.
I would never be okay with that statistic. If that's the fact, no one in this room should be okay with that statistic. No one in the court system should be okay with it. How to fix it is a different problem because the jury is the one that implements that sentence. When you're being judged by your peers, that's something that is handed down by a jury. Now, I do believe that there are some things that have been taking place over the last couple of years to fix that, like requiring certification when you're handling a first-degree murder case. Not every defense attorney can do it. There's training and certifications that are necessary to sit first chair, and a certain number of experience you have to have before you can handle it. I am in support of the early release program by the governor for nonviolent offenders. Sometimes someone serving time opens their eyes, makes them understand that this may be their last chance, their rope may be getting a little bit shorter, and it's time for them to straighten up and do the right thing. Giving them the opportunity to get back out and do the right thing is always warranted when it's a nonviolent crime. That's what I was talking about before, about having your crimes that you can rehabilitate for versus the ones that you can't.
Obviously, that statistics is alarming, but not surprising. Our country incarcerates people at a much higher rate throughout the world, and Louisiana is the worst in the state and the worst country in the world. Just remember that. How do you fix it? Nobody has a right answer. But I will tell you, as your judge, I will always side with the victims' families, not the criminals' families. If there's an opportunity to rehabilitate people, that's what we want to do. I want to bring teen courts and veteran courts so we can have peers judge people, and maybe that'll reduce some of these outrageous sentences that some folks are getting. The other thing is, as far as the early release program, I'm still kind of up in the air about it. It just happened. We let about close to 5,000 folks out. The recidivism rate is still being quantified right now. If people, when they get the sentence, show remorse and want to eliminate the past deviance that brought them to that point, that's what I'll take a look at, not just the entire, well, we're going to let everybody out of jail, because we need to make sure they're not going to repeat the same offense that got them there in the first place.
Okay, so no, I'm not happy with the statistic that you brought up, but I do think that, as Tanya Lurie said, juries are the ones that make the decision. Now, they do not make the decision on how many years somebody spends in jail, but they do make a decision on guilt or innocence. And so for me, I feel like the issue can be resolved by the people. Judges are elected, and so we do need diversity in our judiciary. We need diversity in our DA's offices. And we also need people who are willing to serve on juries. That's the only thing that's going to fix this. And I'm just saying from my personal experience, it's a disparity, because people that are like these defendants that are going to jail, they don't want to serve on juries. They find the first excuse they can find to not sit on the jury. And then that defendant sits before a group of 12 people that look nothing like him, don't understand his background, where he's coming from, and some of them, quite frankly, probably don't even care. So, but then when you get to the judge that has to do the sentencing, yes, oh, I'm sorry, I got a red thing. Sorry.
With respect to the death penalty, that's a shameful statistic, but unfortunately it's not one that the judge has a great deal that they can do about. It starts with the district attorney, because the district attorney through the grand jury decides whether or not to prosecute someone with the death penalty for murder cases. So that's where it starts. and then you get to what kind of attorney did they have. Unfortunately, minority defendants are less likely to be able to afford to have a well-qualified attorney. So that's not something the judge can do anything about. The judge can try to be fair and impartial in the system. With respect to the early release program, I think that it has a good intent, but the problem is what is being done to make sure these people can return back to society with skills and become contributing members. I think it's a halfway measure. I agree with it. We need to get nonviolent people out of offenders out of prison and back into the community, but we need to return them with skills so they can work.
Yes, sir. So at this time, would y'all join me in giving the candidates a round of applause for doing a wonderful job to abiding by the rules to the degree that they could, stand within the format. And they have been so kind to answer all your questions. So let me indulge you. There are a couple things that they didn't get, but I want to just lay the platform on that. And then I'm going to give each of you a minute to say whatever it is that you want to say. You can include the comments that they have asked or not. Okay, we good? So the other two questions, or maybe three questions. One question dealt with the Mississippi River and transportation going across the bridge, and what can we do about that in your seat of judge. One dealt with racial profiling, and what will you do, and how do you envision whether you were against it or for it, and how would you handle that in your. And I think that there was, I think I got them all. And then the other one is what's so unique about you that we should elect you judge. Those were the last three that were there. But that being said, what is so unique about you that we should elect you as judge? That was, I paraphrased it, but that's in essence what the question was. So we good? Everybody's ready. So let's get this 1 minute piece. So we're going to ask you to lean in and listen hard and listen closely to the comments. And I think it's your turn, isn't it? Or is it I think it is, isn't it? Yes. You want to come here, or you good there? Get up then. No, just your close.
I want to thank you all for coming here tonight and give us the opportunity to speak. What I would like for the members of our community to remember is I would like everyone to look at everything that we have, our experience. We all have the same type of education. Our experience and our background is what we can bring forward to help the community. Who has been in this community? Who came before this community just to seek an elected position? Where have we been before this candidacy came up? That's going to tell who you are. One of the things that has been hard during this whole campaign is to be true to your own belief system and stick with it. Whether it was me being pushed to choose to be Democrat or Republican when I've been no party all my life, telling me people were going to vote based on parties, people were going to vote based on who they know, people were going to vote based on friendship or color. Those are the things that I wanted to put aside. I have not promised things. I did not change who I am to run for you. The person that stands before you is the person that I have been for 43 years and the person that I will continue to be once I'm on the bench. Tanya Lurie.
In closing, I'd like to thank again the NAACP for putting this forum on to give us an opportunity to present our case, why we should be elected judge. Number 11, Tom McCormick, getting to the question on the bridge. The governor can't solve it. Your senators and congressmen can't solve it. I hate to tell you, your judge is not going to solve it. That answers that question quickly. The other thing that makes me unique and why I think I should be your judge, you got to look at the total person. I was brought up in the public school system, lived on the east side, not the west side. And what I mean by that is we get along with everybody. It's not about black or white. It's about right and wrong. Getting back to the story that I was telling you about the guidance counselor, because everybody wants to talk about parties. Well, Ms. Jordan asked me, Tom, what you want to be? What party you want to join? I said, well, it depends. I got baseball practice at 6, so if it's before that, I won't be able to go. She said, no, son, you got to pick a Democrat or Republican Party. So I said, well, let me think about that for a second. I said, well, not related to no party people. What's the president? Ronald Reagan was the president at the time, 1992. That's why I'm Republican. But to get to answer the final question, I serve my country, I serve my state, and I want to serve you.
Okay, well, everybody, in this election, I just truly want the community to see my heart as a woman and as a candidate. I have a heart for people, and I want to serve people, and that's why I'm running for this seat. As I told you guys before, I believe in fairness for all people, and that's how I truly feel. It's not something that came about because I needed to find a platform to run for office. It's who I am. It's who I was raised to be. And that's something that won't change as your next judge. If I am so blessed to be elected. I believe that it's a position of service, and I desire to serve this community wholeheartedly and in the way that a judge should do that, and which is with impartiality and fairness for all people. And I stand on the words that I use in my campaign, and that is integrity, compassion, and fairness for all people. And that's what I want to give to this community. So thank you all. It's been a privilege to run for this seat, and I pray that I have your vote in the end. I'm number 12, Miracle Miles. Thank you.
I decided to run for this seat because I feel that our community needs somebody with my 32 years of legal experience, my 30 years of honorable military service, my 12 years as Bruley Town attorney, and my lifetime of community and church involvement, all more than anybody else. And look, I don't take credit for that. The good Lord has blessed me with those opportunities. But, and my community reputation, practicing law here in West Baton Rouge and Port Allen, and having a reputation as an honest, ethical attorney who people know and trust, and my respect for the law, all these things give me the maturity, humility, and judgment we need to restore public trust and confidence to this division of our court for the next 2.5 years. And so I humbly ask for your vote, your support, and most importantly, your prayers. Number 8, Tom Acosta, first on the ballot. Thank you.
First, let me thank everyone for coming tonight. I believe we have approximately 14,000 voters in this election. You are a representation. This room should be full of people, but it's not. But you have a weapon that's available to you, and that's spreading the word and initiating people to go out and vote. This is something that I'm passionate about. As far as the traffic, speak with Mayor Richard Lee here. He can handle that for you. But my uniqueness and qualities that I like to bring to this office is character, knowledge, and integrity. You need someone with the proper character to be able to apply the law with knowledge and have integrity while applying it. I am that person. If you would like to see that on the bench, I ask you to institute a change, bring a radical change into this office. And so I invoke you to vote for me, number 9, Kevin James, on your ballot this Saturday. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Once again, give them a round of applause. I'm so appreciative that you've come out and that you participated, and I trust that you would do as Attorney James said, that you would go and spread the word. You would share it with your neighbors, and you would tell them how important this election is. You would share the information that you've gleaned from this conversation, and you would use it wisely. At this time, it's my